And when you come to this verse, it says Jesus, but it describes him in a certain way. Full of the Holy Spirit. Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit. Listen to this. Left the Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. Notice it didn't say Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, just start shouting. It didn't say Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, begin to dance in the Spirit. It says Jesus, who was full of the Holy Spirit, was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. And saints of God, you need to hear what I'm saying, because a Spirit-filled life, get this in your spirit and write it down. A Spirit-filled life must be prepared for the wilderness. A Spirit-filled life must be prepared for the wilderness. See, that don't sound like something that make you want to holler and wave your hands from side to side, because let me tell you something. What the wilderness, how many folks have ever been to the wilderness? Been on camping trips, been in places where it was trees, and some of us, we couldn't stand the wilderness because we're allergic to everything under the sun. But the wilderness is the challenging and pressing places of life. Listen to this. The challenging and pressing places of life where character is developed and growth occurs. The challenging and pressing places of life where character is developed and growth occurs. Because, see, let me just tell you something. Some of us, we know about some challenging and pressing places. For some, the wilderness is the job that we're going to, some today and some tomorrow. For some young people sitting in here, maybe there's a particular school subject that is a wilderness. You're trying to figure out what you're going to do with it. Like I told y'all, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with geometry, and every time I see a stop sign, I want to scream, amen. But maybe for some young people, there is a school. Maybe there are those who can talk and just bear witness, and you don't have to say it out loud, but you bear witness even in your own spirit that bankruptcy has been a wilderness. Having to relocate from Chicago to Nashville, from Nashville to New York has been your wilderness. Maybe somebody in here, health, the transition of your health or the transition of your loved one's health has been your wilderness. For some, it is divorce and the dissolution of relationship. And then for others, the wilderness experience for some, even in this moment, is that they are confronted with the reality of death. One that they loved and was connected to so deeply is no longer here, and now they find themselves in the wilderness of life. Let me just ask you a question. Is there anybody in Temple who knows about a wilderness? I said, let me just give you this truth of all truths. The goal, even in the midst of our wildernesses, is to learn the lessons that the wilderness will bring. Some of our best life lessons, how many folk can testify? Some of the best life lessons come to us in the wilderness. That here we are, we learn the meaning of money in the wilderness. Because how many folks, let's just tell the truth, how many folks have learned the value of a dollar when you didn't have one? Because then you remember how you were not always the best steward of your financial resource before. Some of us learn the best lessons when we're in the wilderness of a health transition, when the doctor gives you the do or die. They say, if you don't do this, then this is what. Some of us, we didn't start exercising until we got in the wilderness. But I'm here to let you know, if you let the wilderness teach you, the wilderness can inform you and instruct you in some ways that you can never imagine. And let me just tell you this is a truth of all truths. You do not make it to the winner's circle without a few wilderness experiences. You do not make it to the see, here's the problem. Here is the problem, and it's been a problem for me, and I know it may be a problem. Some of us want to get to the winner's circle, but we don't want to go through the wilderness. And whatever your winner circle may be, sometimes the only way you're going to get to that circle is to go through the wilderness situations of life. And let me tell you how I know. I was thinking about people even throughout the journey of history who had to go through the wilderness before they could get to the winner circle. Even we saw it this year with LeBron James. LeBron James went back to Cleveland to win a championship. He didn't win it immediately. There were some wildernesses. To keep making it to the finals and still lose, that's a wilderness experience, because nobody wants to sacrifice money, time, and energy to go somewhere and still lose. But here's what the wilderness had to teach him, is that if you want something, you got to keep going after it. And eventually, how many folk know what I'm talking about? Because there are those of us, we didn't get it the first, second, third, fourth, fifth time, but on the sixth time, we found ourselves keeping that tenacity and that determination. I even think about, I wouldn't necessarily use Ronald Reagan in a sermon as far as his politics, but what I can tell you is that historically, for those who were living then, Ronald Reagan ran for the party's nomination against Gerald Ford and lost. Oh, y'all better hear what I'm saying. He tried in the 70s to be the Republican nominee for president and lost to sitting president Gerald Ford. And in his memoirs, he said, it was the most confusing time in my life. He said, now don't y'all laugh at President Reagan, because he had some other things going on. But he said, but he almost decided to give up politics for good until he realized is that if he really wanted something bad enough, he'd have to try again. See, sometimes we give up in the wilderness. Sometimes we throw in the towel in the wilderness, because the wilderness doesn't always feel comfortable. But if something is worth pursuing, if something is worth having, if something is worth getting a grasp on, even in the wilderness, you've got to still see yourself coming out on the other side victorious. And see, you've got to see yourself, because the Bible says, speaking those things that are not as though they were. Even in the midst of your own personal wilderness, you've got to speak truth to the wilderness and let your wilderness know that this is just for a season. In fact, encourage somebody. Just point at them and just tell them your wilderness is for a season. Tell somebody else your wilderness is for a season. Because see, when you come out on the other side of your wilderness, something begins to happen in your spirit, because there's something birthed that lets you know that if you can get through this wilderness, you can get through anything. If you can get over this hurdle, you can conquer. How many folk know what I'm talking about? See, people see you sitting here, but they really don't know the wilderness that you've had to deal with. And see, they really don't understand why it is you don't have any problem standing up, waving your hand. It's because God has been faithful to you in the wilderness. God has seen you through the wilderness, and God is right there with you in your present wilderness. And when you thought you were going to break, he gave you a level of elasticity in your spirit, and what you thought was going to break you, God has used to just shape you and to help you see life a little bit differently, because the wilderness is not here to destroy you. The wilderness is here to help make you into a better man or woman, because when something else comes, you have a record with God about what he's able to do in the wilderness. Learn the lessons in the wilderness.